We are well into 2024. Welcome to the Disrupt Education Podcast. I've got Allie Privet here and a special guest we'll introduce in a moment. How you doing, Allie?
I'm well, despite the weird winter we're having.
Is it even
It,
winter? I don't know.
right, is it? Last year, it was like every time we were like, and I got 2 more feet of snow up in Wisconsin, and this year it's like the complete opposite. But that makes for a little spice in the wintertime. Although I will say the one thing I was most looking forward to this winter, which I have not yet, maybe by the time this recording comes out, is that that I love to snowshoe on the lake that I
Yep.
live on, and
Mhm.
it isn't even frozen over. And so, which
You
is
gotta go fishing.
really atypical. Like, I mean, we're talking like the last time this happened was like in the 1800s where it didn't
Wow.
freeze over. Like, so it's like no one's recollection. So I'll just
Yeah.
say, like, if you're experiencing some oddness in 2024, like things aren't how they used to be, maybe it's just like the dawn of a new era. Like, I don't know. So,
Yes, 100%. And actually, our guest is Joanne Kaminski, who's also in Wisconsin. So you're
Yes,
both from
oh,
in the Wisconsin area. Joanne, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
The tutoring guru of a lifetime. So for those who don't know, Joanne and I spoke on the podcast about almost 3 years ago, right around the pandemic when people were like, "What are we doing online?" Blah 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 blah. And at that time, you were a decade in, so you're probably about 15 years into online tutoring, a guru. Tell us a little bit about your business and what you do, and then we'll jump into how 2024 looks and beyond with online tutoring.
Yeah, you bet. I actually, when I left the school system, I had no idea what I was going to be or do. Like, I kind of had like this identity crisis for myself. Like, if I'm not a teacher, who am I? And for a year, I tried to do this self-discovery of like all these different businesses, and I failed at every single one of them. But I learned about like SEO, and I learned about marketing, and I learned all these different strategies. And I thought 1 year later, all of a sudden, I like woke up with this epiphany of, hey, I could actually do like online tutoring. There's this thing called Skype, and I could share my screen, and would that work? And I got excited, and I brought my computers downstairs in my basement to see if it would work. And this is back in 2010, right? So
Skype,
pre-pandemic.
Skype's the
Skype,
early Zoom.
exactly. It was. And so, when I figured out it worked, I was like, well, who can I work with? And my nephew at the time was struggling with reading, and he lived in Illinois. So there was no way that I could work, with him in person. And so I brought it up to my sister-in-law, and at that point in time, I really had to sell online tutoring because most people at that point in time, they were just like so fearful. They were scared that their kids were going to break their computer. They were scared that, that it wouldn't work, that it wouldn't, it's not going to be possible. How can you teach reading online? I had a lot of doubters, but I was able to slowly convince people to start coming online with me and do the online tutoring. And we were all blown away by how quickly then those results ended up coming for their students. And after a couple of years of me really figuring all the pieces out, I realized I don't just want to teach students, I also want to help other tutors. So since 2012, I've been guiding other tutors. And here's the thing that I've noticed. Every single tutor in the beginning makes the exact same mistakes. We all make the same exact mistakes in the beginning. So I can like pinpoint now, oh, yep, okay, so they're about to take this turn, they're about to make this mistake, and I can turn them around so that they can skip the line a lot faster and be able to get results. It took me about 2 years to get my business like really up and running to the way that I wanted to. And now I have tutors that I work with. They're able to get their businesses up and going in 4 to 6 months. And I'm just like, man, I wish I had me back then. But I also do tutor 15 to 20 hours a week with my own students because
Mhm.
I fell in love with teaching again when I became an online tutor. I mean, working with the kids one on one was such a drastic and different experience from being in the classroom that it was like I really started realizing the importance of that independent, one on one
Yeah.
instruction with kids when they're getting stuck and they don't know how to help themselves, and we can guide them in the right place to be able to fix their mistakes too.
Yeah.
I can so relate with leaving the classroom and having an identity crisis as and trying a whole bunch of different things. Because when I left the classroom, and I just left at the June of 2022, so about a year and a half ago now, coming up on 2 years, it was I've shifted a lot since then, but it's interesting you found your way back to the, the classroom in a different arena, like, by
Yeah.
tutoring. And I have found that having some students that I tutor, not at the level that you do, but then also I am doing these like more shorter term stints of teaching that are like 2 to 3 weeks long. I found that I like love that versus, completely stepping away. But I
Yeah.
wonder, like, I know some of my friends who have stepped away from teaching, they just are like, I'm done. I never
Yep.
want to do that again. And they feel like this complete disconnect in the classroom. So,
Yeah.
you know, when you talked about like helping teachers, and I think when this episode comes out, like there's still this talk a lot about, like lots of teachers thinking about leaving or are planning on
Hmm.
leaving. And, what would you tell them? Like, I mean, because I can feel, the excitement from you of teaching. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of teachers, if they're at the point of leaving, they may think, I'm never going to do it again. But
Yeah.
there, if you can go back to remember, like when you first started,
Yeah.
we all loved it. So what would you kind of say to those thinking about leaving, and kind of like what you could do,
Hmm.
in alignment with getting that joy that you enjoy with tutoring, and like speak to how much different it is than the classroom.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece of it is it is very different and you don't know how different it is until you really step into it. So even just, if you have like a family member who is struggling or you know somebody who has a kid that's struggling in the area that you specifically love to teach, you know, give it a try, right? And see what is that like for you? Because I think when you get to see those aha moments from those students one on one, it's very different than in the classroom, right? Because you've got kids who are just kind of trying to passively learn. They're not actively learning. When the kids are working with you one on one, they're actively learning. They have no choice. Like and I think the difference is too, there is a difference between teaching and tutoring. Like I almost feel like tutoring is the teaching that I always thought that I was going to be doing. But
That's a good
what
point.
teaching ended up being was it ended up real teaching, like in the classroom situation the way it is today, ended up being classroom management. It was like 90% classroom management, 10% maybe teaching, right? And it was like teaching to the masses versus teaching to the individual and the student. When I now today what I do is on-demand teaching, which I love because I'm able to take a look at where are the gaps this child has. I start off with an assessment. I mean, what real assessment was supposed to be in the beginning, right? That assessment where
You
you're
don't
like,
give them
okay,
an
let me find.
SAT?
No, there's no SAT. In fact, there is like this online program. It's called the Dora assessment,
Mhm.
and it's awful. It's like click here, click there. I'm like, no, I need to have the kids reading. So
Mhm.
for me, I give the kids a qualitative reading inventory. So I have them actually read for me. I have them read word lists. I have them read passages, and I'm finding out what is happening for these kids while they're reading. What are those gaps? And then when I figure out what those gaps are, I'm like, okay. I know exactly what I'm going to teach you because I know where you're getting stuck. I know exactly what your reading level is, so I can put you in appropriate books, right? I don't have to use the curriculum. I can step away from curriculum that dictates what I should be teaching, and instead, I can rely on the education that I have put into place for myself as a professional, and I can now make a difference in those students. And it really does bother me when, as a reading tutor, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. There's like this program called Orton Gillingham, and everybody thinks that this Orton Gillingham reading program is the reading program that all kids who have dyslexia or struggle with reading should have. And it's like, really? So do you want to know what the educational like process was for those people? Like they go through a year training with this program, but they don't go through a lifetime of learning about reading,
Right.
right? Whereas I've invested all of my time in a lifetime of learning about reading. what are the right skills that they need to learn at the right stages, right? And so now I get the opportunity to do that. I get to take what I have learned, put it into practice, and be able to make very quick strides and growth with the students that I work with. Now, for somebody who's just like, they're like, I don't know, I'm burnt out on teaching. Take some time off then.
Mhm.
Take some time off and see if it comes back to you, right? Where you're like missing it. Because that's what I did for a year. I was like, I just don't think this is in it for me. I mean, I didn't see any options of really tutoring, or I didn't really have that in me to really want to tutor at the beginning. Um, so it was just kind of like one of those things was like I kind of put tutoring on that back burner because I was like, I don't know. And I started seeking out, okay, what are some other things? I checked out like at that point it was like selling on eBay. I was like, okay, well maybe I could sell things on eBay. And then I realized how much work that was. And I was like, oh my gosh, maybe selling on eBay is not my thing. And then it was like, okay, I got mixed up with a network marketing company, which I was like, again, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I didn't join that network marketing company, but it was a total scam, okay?
Right.
And the person who sold me into it was, somebody from church that I trusted. So know that you can't just trust anybody out there in the world if they're going to try to sell you on a network marketing opportunity. Really do your due diligence and research. But I did learn, again, I learned those skills and those tactics that I needed that I brought into this business. And so you're gonna you're going to be learning new skills, and don't be afraid to learn new skills. That's what's going to drive the enthusiasm and the excitement. And I think that's the most important part is we just think we want to go from point A to point D, and we just want to take the straight line there. And there isn't a straight line there. So point A, we break it up into there's these four pieces of learning. The first piece is unconscious incompetence. We
Mhm.
don't know what we don't know. The second one is conscious incompetence. And this is where all of a sudden I say, holy cow. I had no idea there were all these different steps. I mean, I have to learn this and I have to learn that and I have to learn, oh my gosh. And this is where overwhelm lives. Because we're like, there's no way, like we can't even see our way out of it. We're like, there's no way I'm going to learn all of that. But you can, absolutely. And then you move into C, which is now we are into conscious competence. I'm starting to finally be able to get my hand wrapped around the things that I need to be able to do with running my business, with getting found online. And then I move over to that last one, which is unconscious competence. I no longer have to think about what are the things that I need to do. I just do them and life comes easy. A lot of times we just want to take that A to D path, but it doesn't exist. Or we think,
Right.
oh, I'm not smart enough, or I'm too young, or I'm too old, or I'm too, whatever. Or I don't teach the same thing that you teach, Joanne. I don't teach reading. I teach math. We use all of these excuses as to why we can't do it. And we allow that to stop us. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of like personal development and professional, like personal development that goes into the whole pot of creating your own business.
Right.
And we have to also master that because we didn't need to necessarily master that in the classroom. Or if
Yeah.
we mastered it, we don't really see how we can put it into practice with our own business.
So I like that because you talked a little bit about the one-on-one, like you're really working like and your different view of education or teaching versus tutoring. And I thought I was gonna teaching is tutoring and vice versa. Yeah. In the classroom, I think we actually, unfortunately, as educators, and I think both of you all know this as well, and our listeners know this, is in teaching, you're kind of forced into this box and you
Mhm,
actually lose what you thought teaching was. You do.
mhm,
And
mhm,
I thought that you put that very eloquently because, you kind of described a little bit of a Dunning-Kruger curve there, right? It's just a little
mhm,
bit different when it's starting a business. And when I teach entrepreneurs, I have a whole bunch of different entrepreneurs or mindsets in a class. You got to class 30 people and I have to manage that. There's that word, manage, right?
mhm,
Which, you have to do what you got to do in a 45-minute period or whatever every day. But speaking to the students one-on-one, which I do often, man, those are the times. And guess what? That's exactly what you're doing, Joanne. So
Hmm.
what I love is the on-demand teaching, the you know the one-on-one piece that you get, and you have to really relearn what you really thought teaching was. But once you get
Hmm.
there and then you get through the marketing pieces, it starts to fly. You don't teach to a test, you teach to a human. I really like that.
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about, post pandemic, right? There's been some changes. And then there's been a lot of let's get back to the same thing, which I think is also
Yeah.
driving things out. So since we last talked, it was been about 3 years ago, like I said, in the middle of the pandemic. Um, there's some different ways that people are using tutoring. And do we call it tutoring? I mean, I think that's a generalized terms, but
Yeah.
now it's like it's expanding learning and really alternative education or unique innovative education. I think that's really what you're doing here. Um,
Yeah.
Watching, and we'll put up all your stuff, but there's a lot. You have a YouTube channel, you're very, very active on that. What are some of like the trends that you've seen in since the last time we spoke 3 years ago, with regular education, students, parents, people now like homeschooling? Kind of unpack
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so I definitely see, well, the pandemic obviously caused a big reading gap. So I see that, and but I think every subject across the board, they saw their kids decrease. Um, Not only did they see some people will say that they also saw the ability of grit for kids to decrease. I have not seen that on in my side of things. The kids that I work very hard to be able to learn the skills that they need to be able to learn. So it could be age wise that's just different. I work with younger kids, so they experienced had a different experience than some of the older kids. So, but a lot of the people who are working with the older kids say, yeah, they lost their grit, they lost their ability to kind of stick with things when they got tough, and they give up
Mhm.
faster and those kinds of things. And again, with the younger kids, I'm not seeing that, but I am seeing there was a very big gap in what our kids are able to do. Because imagine our kids that were in kindergarten and first grade and they were learning to read, there was this imagine trying to hear the sounds when somebody's, face is muffled up like this,
Right.
right? It's hard. And so that caused problems for some kids, or they had teachers that really they were substitute teachers because maybe their teacher wasn't there, or maybe they were online and so they were just sitting at the computer, but then they turned off their camera and walked away. I mean, they might not have even received the instruction. We
Hmm.
don't know. So there's still that big gap that we're catching up from. And a lot of the stories that I hear from the parents are, you know, my kid struggled because of the pandemic and they didn't get the same kind of instruction. So there's still that's going on. This like we're kind of trying to fix, this gap that was created. With homeschool, I would say the homeschool education world has totally increased ever since the pandemic. You had obviously people were forced into doing it, but some people decided during the pandemic, I actually really enjoy this and I want to continue to do it. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about homeschool families is that the homeschool families are doing all of the teaching themselves, right? They see themselves as in charge of their child's education, like an administrator. And in fact, they start their own schools. So, in order to become a homeschool parent, they have to start their own school and register with the state. So, they do that, they go through that process, and they are overseeing their child's education now. They're making those educational decisions. Who's going to teach this, who's going to teach that. So it might be that they're teaching, one parent decides they're going to teach this subject, another parent's going to teach this subject, maybe one parent teaches all the subjects, whatever the case may be. And then they from there, if there's something that they feel is a gap for themselves, will seek out the resources and tools online. A lot of homeschool families were going to like outschool to do some supplemental education or find courses that their kids would really enjoy and have fun with. And then you have parents who are like, wait, my kid is really struggling in this area, I don't know how to help them. Let me search to see what can I do to be able to help my child. And then, they'll look online, they'll find me or other tutors that are out there, and they reach out to us. And I work with actually still students from all over the world.
Hmm.
I work with kids from Peru and Australia and Canada and all over the United States, from the West Coast to the East Coast. And so it allows me to work more daytime hours, which is great. As a tutor in the past, I always kind of had to focus on, you know, working all evenings, all of the time, because that's when kids were out of school. When you add the homeschool factor, when you add other time zones, it increases the amount of hours that you're able to really work with students so that you don't always have to work some of those dreaded hours. You get to choose what is the schedule that you want to be able to work and then go from there and begin scheduling your students based off of the blocks that you have open.
For for this kind of like tutoring, life, you kind of hinted at, I'm get that you are kind of like a tutor to tutors, like you
Yeah.
help people start
Tutor to
up
tutor.
their
Two tutors.
Yeah, I know. They hate that though, because I was like, hey, what if I called myself the tutor for tutors? And they're like, no, you're a business coach, because they finally have
Right.
started seeing themselves as professionals in the industry,
Mhm.
right? They're business owners. And so when they start really seeing themselves as business owners, they're like, no, I don't want to see you as my tutor for my business. You're my business coach because you're helping me guide me through the processes to put the right pieces into my business.
Oh, right. With that, like, is what are some of like kind of the mindset shifts that you help teachers overcome? Because I mean, even in just that little bit, I know so many teachers that feel like they're incapable of doing anything other than teaching. And it largely because I think the educational system is so different than any other kind of corporation, which it is a corporation.
Hmm.
It's one that I feel like diminishes us as professionals oftentimes. Now, there are plenty of awesome schools that are empowering teachers and educators, and more so now than ever. I feel like that is a something that can really elevate a school program, but there's still plenty of places where teachers are, you have to teach it this way on this day with these people on these tests. And if that's all you know in a career, because oftentimes teachers do stay for 5, 10, 15, 20, they career out in it. Like, for teachers who do decide to step out of the classroom and enter the business world, which is completely different than the educational system, what are some things that you have to kind of coach teachers on and they can kind of expect to maybe go through
Yeah.
in that process?
Well, the first one, this is the biggest one. They think that their business is all about me and that everybody wants to learn everything about them. And their business is nothing about them. Their business is all about their ideal client. And so, like, for instance, when a tutor is making a website on their own, they want to tell everybody about how many years they have taught in the classroom, about what degrees they have, about what schools they attended, and those kinds of things. And that is the least important thing on a parent's mind when they want to work with you. So it's really understanding, like, what is copywriting? Copywriting is not the copywriting you're used to in the school system with that little C that says that you can't distribute all of this work. Copywriting is the words that you write to sell your services. And you do that in a way that says, look, I not only work with kids like yours, I like working with kids like yours. I understand exactly what they're going through and I can help. And really it's about, for me, like I have, look, your child can learn to read without the tears, the fighting, and the struggle. And another thing that I like put onto my website is your child is smart. You know your child is smart, but is struggling with reading. Notice here, it's not about me. It's about like exactly where the parent is and what they're seeing at this moment. Like, oh my gosh, I am dealing with all of this fighting at home with my child to get them to read, or they're crying all of the time because they can't figure it out a word, right? So it's all about what the parent is experiencing at home with their child so that they see that you understand what it is that they're going through. And this is using empathy when you are going on into it. One thing that I see as teachers, we feel we become very regimented. Here's what you should do.
Mhm.
As a parent, you should be reading to your child every single day. As a parent, you should be doing A, B, C, and D. And if you're not doing these things, you're not putting the right pieces into place. We can come off when we have that attitude as uncaring, unkind, um, you know, not even listening to what the parents are going through. As somebody who's been a parent, I can now say, you can do everything right and still have a child that struggles. right? Because I've seen it with two of my own children where they needed more help from me to be able to learn to read because the school wasn't providing all of the right services. And so I can look at it from that empathetic point instead of saying, "Oh, you're not doing the right things. Here are all the things that you should be doing that you're not doing. That'll help your child be a better reader." Instead, I can say, "Look, there's a problem that we have. When it comes to parents, they haven't accepted us as teachers. So they fight with us more. And it's not like teaching other kids, right?" And I can say, "Look, my own kids have done that to me. My own kids have like said, 'That's not the way my teacher taught me.'" And I'm like, "Do you know what your mom does for a living?" Right? Like you're like, "Really? You're gonna play this one on me?" But, it happens to every single parent. It doesn't matter who they are. It's not that they did anything wrong at all. They probably have done everything right. And so I just assume the best of every single parent that comes to me. Instead of thinking the worst or that these kids have had all these terrible experiences, I just assume the best and just say, you probably have had all the right instruction. You probably have had all the right pieces put into place. For some reason, it hasn't clicked. Let's
Mhm.
figure out why. We'll figure out why, and then we can move forward. The other thing that tutors really struggle with in the beginning is when it comes to the marketing piece, they want to just throw out these initial "I'm taking on students" kind of messages. And that isn't what connects to people's hearts, right? So you have to think about what type of information you want to be able to share out there that is going to really resonate with people and capture their hearts. And testimonials are really the biggest things that we can offer. And even if you haven't had the opportunity to tutor one-on-one, you've got testimonials from your classroom, those aha moments of kids that you've worked with. And the third thing that all teachers struggle with in the beginning, every single one of them, "I can tutor everything." It's probably true. You probably can, but you can't market to everything. Because I can't get into understanding what is the parent emotionally feeling and the student emotionally feeling and what are they going through. I can't connect that to every single subject in a deeper manner. Like, I can't say on my website, because I've tapped into my students and what it is they're struggling with, I can say, "You've probably tried ABC Mouse. You've probably tried Hooked on Phonics. And for some reason, those programs aren't working for you," right? If I tutored everything, I couldn't use those kinds of specific examples that connect with the parents in a way that they say, "Yes, I have tried that. It didn't work." Okay, I get what she's saying. Maybe my child needs one-on-one with somebody who knows exactly what's going on, right? And so we want to tutor everything because we think we can. It's going to be more expensive for your business because there's a lot of different subscriptions you're going to have to purchase in order to teach those subjects online. And then you're not going to have a marketing message or anything that's going to make you stand out. And you won't be able to charge as much for your services because you're more of a generalist versus a specialist. So people do want to hire specialists. I mean, think about it. If you had a heart disease, would you want to go on in to your general doctor if you have a heart problem? Probably not. You want to go into the general, you want to go to the specialist who's going to specifically understand everything about the heart, right? Do you want to go to the doctor who's going to need to follow a program in order, like, let me open up my textbook. Okay, I got this. I'm gonna read my textbook to figure out how to fix your heart. Which one do you want? The one who's gonna have to come on over here, step away from the scalpel to figure out what they have to do to solve the problem? Or do you want the tutor who just has they've worked with so many students in the same exact problem that it feels like it's just nothing. It's like ABCD, EFG, got this, right? I know exactly what to do because of this. Okay, I see this happening, so I'm going to do this. It's like a dance between, the student and the tutor that you're doing. And maybe you tried this with another student before. But for this student, it's not working. So you're like, okay, I've got to switch it. I got to try this strategy now instead. Let me teach it a different way because they're not understanding it. Or maybe I can bring in graphics because I'm online, or I can use this video that I can grab that will help them understand the concept in a different way because I'm not explaining it in a way that they understand, right? We can tap into all these different resources that are out there because we have really, specialized in what it is that we do. And when you do it day in and day out, you get so good at it that you can charge more for your services and begin making 10K a month. And I think this is a really important thing because we all a lot of times we don't want to talk about money. Like it's
Mhm.
kind of like, oh. 10K a month. Oh, we get snobbish a little bit. Like, why would you want to make 10K a month? Like, why would
Why?
you even want
People
that?
say that. Why do you want to pay ticket?
Yeah, why this isn't about the money. This is
Mm.
about right? And so a lot of the I teach, how many of you guys fill in the blank? I teach because I love teaching, not because of the
Money.
how many times have you heard teachers say that?
I don't believe a word
Us.
of it.
I don't, you don't believe so, but you've heard other teachers say it, I'm
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
100%.
I've
You're
said
not
it.
supposed to talk. That's a great point. You're not supposed to
It
talk
is.
about money as an educator because it always comes out like, and then you're always crabbing about money. But I'm like, but in a free market like you got there, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, and I am only working 15 to 20 hours now with my
mhm.
students, and I'm making 10K a month with my
Yeah.
students.
You
So
know,
it's
that's
absolutely
interesting. I
possible.
often have the conversation with, and it's funny because a lot of educators that I know who have side hustles or they're doing like, they'll even work within in the school district and get like, funding through that, which is still, it's safe, but it's
Mm.
less. It is so much less because I talk, I've done my own tutoring. My wife actually, right along with you, Joanne, is a reading specialist. She I've heard of a lot of those different reading programs for elementary school kids that are like, no. But the amount of money that you're making when I started talking to other people about, okay, she's making this an hour, and they're like, what? Like, and people don't realize that there is a market. And again, I think there's a couple of things that I like here. Like number one, choosing your doctor, which is hilarious because I'm so old. My doctor, right in the middle of an exam was like, yo, I'm gonna go out and smoke. That's how old I am. But anyway,
Mm.
but like picking the people, but now your doctors are online. Like you can find a specialist at, the Mayo Clinic or whatever. I mean, if you have the right, funds and those types of things, but people do and worldwide. I like that you said that.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing is like taking ownership. Number one, I'm going to have you come in and just zoom in on an entrepreneurship class because you are definitely a business coach. I'm sitting here hearing this and I'm like, I think you need to talk to my high school students because there is like they want to do everything and those four steps you went through are exactly you can do that with any business, which I love.
Yes.
But you're so specialized on this. And again, like for you listeners out there, come on, man. I like 15 years of this and understanding, and you've gone through it. And I wish I had me. We talk about like tutors taking the wheel, right? And
Hmm.
as teachers, we get into a very, and I'm guilty of this, into a very safe space, right?
Hmm.
It's like, you know what? All right, I'll accept less of my worth. I'll just kind of like, I'll learn how to adapt and tolerate rather than go get.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that's probably one of the biggest things, but there are other places out there, tutoring centers, et cetera, that are probably taking advantage of that. Do you want to speak
Yes.
to that a little bit?
Yeah.
Like what are some of the things that the tutors can take the front wheel on this? And kind of going into that, is it possible for an educator to be in the classroom and start this? So we'll
Yeah.
start there, and then how do
Yeah.
they take the wheel from there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like you said, like the safe spot sometimes is to go to those other companies because we're like, oh, well, let me just see. My husband guided me in that direction too.
Mhm.
So he was like, when I decided I wanted to do tutoring, he goes, well, why don't you first work for one of the companies and
Mhm.
then you'll be able to go that route. So um I at first was like, all right, well, I don't really know a lot about like running my own company and that kind of stuff. So,
Mhm.
I'll give it a go. I really trusted everything that my husband said. I was kind of still young. And I was like, all right, so let me try that. And I went to a company in the area and they were going to, with my 10 years experience of teaching, master's degree, reading
Mhm.
specialist, gave me $15 an hour for tutoring reading online, while they charged the parents $50 an hour.
Mhm.
And then they had the tutors working with students three at a time. So they were making $150 an hour. Tutor does not get paid with more students, but they get paid because of more students. So as you can see, there's a little problem here, right? $15 an hour, somebody who has all this experience that I have, and they're raking in 150. How much on marketing and all of that are they having to spend their money on? Like there's a complete flip-flop of there's just this ability to really downplay the education and the experience that we do have, and to think that they can manipulate us because we don't have the marketing side. So when I saw that, I thought there's one difference between that company and me. They know how to sell my services and I don't, but I can figure it out.
Yeah.
And while I had to do that on my own at the time, there were people that I could look at online and I could try things that wasn't the same as just following somebody who's in just tutoring. I could start playing with some of the things like social media, right? Learning how to use the social media tools, learning how to, create my own videos and those kinds of things. I started learning from the gurus that were out there, and I got to decide where my education went. I got to invest in me. And I didn't have to, invest the way, like, how we have to get like our certifications like updated and we have
Mhm.
to take these stupid courses that like you never use or whatever.
And a lot of them are very
Um,
stupid.
yeah, exactly. Well, I now get to
Unfortunately.
take my business money and I get to
Right.
invest it in me, and I get
Hmm.
to decide how I want to invest that. So that's what I began doing is I started like taking these courses to be able to learn how to use these different things. And while our industry is a little bit different, I was able to figure out quickly how it was different and be able to maneuver it and work it around and tweak it so that I could get found. So is it possible to still be in the classroom and start your own tutoring business? Absolutely.
Hmm.
It does depend on, though, what hours do you want to work? Decide that ahead of time. Figure it out. If it's one day a week, it's one day a week. Okay. You don't have to invest, 5 nights a week, weekends, all of that. Just try it out and see if you like it. Get that first student and go from there. A lot of people think getting that first student is really hard. It's not. There's like 190 million different ways that you can get students out there in the world. Okay. So we share all of those strategies inside of our community on how you can do that and begin seeing is this going to be something that is going to be a right fit? Every single tutor who's come into our community, every single one, I asked them this question: have you fallen in love with teaching again? And they all look at me and they say, yes.
Hmm.
I this is what I got into teaching for. This is why I wanted to do it. And I think that's really important. And I started noticing for me, like some people were like, well, you can make more money if you do group classes. Why don't you take what you do and do it in a group class? And for reading, this was not the easiest place to do that when kids have to be reading text at their level and skills and all of that. Is it possible? Sure. I mean, during the pandemic, I took a group of 4 of my kids and I put them into all one class together just to say, okay, do I even like group tutoring? You try it out and you find out, do you like it? And here's what I found for me. I have PTSD from the classroom. I have PTSD from classroom management. And when I put 4 kids on the same computer as me with all of my with it, PTSD comes back, and I'm having to manage this kid who's turning around in his chair, and this kid over here who's like off in space, and this kid over here who can't figure out the tech, whatever the case may be, right? Whereas when I work one on you, Peter, are you with me? Peter,
What?
come on
I'm
now.
sorry, what? For
Focus,
those
Peter,
on
come on.
YouTube, you just saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it all comes back. And I'm just like, oh, there's a little bit of anxiety starting to build up in
Sure.
me, and I don't like that. I love the relationships I build with my students one on one, and I do charge more for my services because I work with them one on one.
Yeah.
Some people they may choose to charge more for their services because they're working with groups of kids. But
Hmm.
again, I'm working one on one with my kids and I'm making over 10K a month.
Hmm.
So it's possible to make a really good income by doing the one on one tutoring. And you will find people who, a lot of people, they have this belief, they think people will never pay that for tutoring. Yes, they will.
Yeah.
Yes, they will. There are people you can never, ever, ever, when you have a parent who's like, I know that this is the right tutor for my child, they will go through any length and hoop to jump through to be able to make it work if they can.
Hmm.
But we have to make them feel like that they know that we are the tutor, right? We
Mhm.
have to stand out in that way so that they want to choose us and pick us and move to that next level. And we have to do that in a safe way for them. And that's exactly the process that I teach people through. A lot of people want to talk about money right out of the gate, right?
Mhm.
I refuse to
Right.
answer the question. If people say to me, like, Joanne, how much do you charge? Um, I listen for another question because usually they're not done. How much do you charge and how does online tutoring work? I'm going to answer, how does online tutoring work? And I'm
Mhm.
totally going to bypass how much do I charge for tutoring services because they don't know enough at this point in time. They don't understand the value at this point in time. Once they understand the value
Right.
that is at the table, and I'm ready to say, are you ready to get started? We now can have the money conversation.
It's value proposition, Allie. I'm telling you, she's like killing it with entrepreneurship. I love it.
She is. I mean, she like perfect to have her go and come into an entrepreneurship class. But
Mhm.
I feel like anyone listening to this podcast who is entrepreneurial minded in any capacity just got 10K worth of coaching.
Right. Yeah. You're welcome. You disrupt education. Yeah.
This is the whole thing. The people like we can't be afraid to give away our knowledge to people
Hmm.
too, right? We
Hmm.
a lot of people think, oh, well, if I create a video about like this topic, then they're not going to want to hire me because they can just do it themselves. No, what you're doing is you're building trust. I mean, you do want
Hmm.
to create the right type of content. If you just create how-to videos, you very likely aren't going to actually land people. You
Hmm.
have to have call to actions.
Yeah.
You have to take them to the next step. You have to, tell them what is the next step to be able to work with you. You have there's certain things that you have to do to move them there. We have to talk about their mindset. We have to talk about their kids' mindset, right? In this whole process because they want their child to be confident, right? And so we have to bring that piece on into it. How is what we're doing going to make their child more confident in the subject that I am helping them with?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just think that there is so much opportunity in the educational system as a whole to recognize the power of, you know, yeah, you can say smaller classroom sizes, but the power of one-on-one. And Peter and I have said plenty of times on the podcast, like kind of like there is a lot of power in like a homeschool community and co-op and kind of this it's almost like a one room schoolhouse. It's a
Hmm.
different take. It's like a 21st
Mm-hmm.
century model of it. Like tutoring, if you were the administrator of your children's education as a parent and you're literally trying to figure out what are the best tools, it's probably in your community. And like but we've kind of displaced that community and tutoring is a way to kind of administer and get the pieces that you need from the experts that are in the schools, but they're spending their expertise doing a lot of management and not using their expertise to educate that information and disseminate it. And so there is such an opportunity here for school system to kind of think about how to use their experts differently.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
for teachers to be empowered to realize the power of their expertise with a different teaching model that may involve
Mm-hmm.
some tutoring on the side or as a full-blown career.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
guys remember ZPD, like when you were going through like the education world?
Yep. Yep.
What happened to it when we stepped into the classroom? Zone of proximal development. What happened to that?
Oh,
It totally disappeared.
Yeah.
Nobody talked about it.
Right.
It went out the door, but we all learned it as we were going through
mm,
like our education classes. I feel like ZPT has totally come back on into what it is that I do, and that's why I feel like I'm able to teach now
Right.
because I'm like I know exactly what level I can teach you at, and now I can slowly begin making the content a little harder, a little
Hmm.
harder, a little harder until you're all of a sudden doing these things that you never thought you could do.
Right.
mhm.
Well, here's what I love about this, and I think you again eloquently said it as educators who burn out, and we've talked about this, Allie, who really have lost that spark. Um, it's still there. And what Joanne you put out there is actually look, if you're looking to reignite that and take that step, outside of a classroom into like teaching what you really want to teach, but we try to do it in the classroom anyway, but to really have the time to do it and have the resources, which that's you, Joanne, to do this, where can people find you? Because I think that, this is in this day and age, in 24, educators are now finding out they have more opportunities than ever. What we're doing here at Disrupt Education is giving them that opportunity to really be that educator, those awesome educators that are out there. So how do they
Yeah.
connect with you, Joanne?
Yeah, you can always connect. There's a few ways you can connect with me. First is my website, onlinetutorcoach.com. Feel free to reach out to me that way. We also have a free Facebook group that tutors can join called the Ultimate Support Group for Online Tutors. And there's also my YouTube channel, which you can find at youtube.com/Joanne Kaminski. And reach out to me anytime. I'm on Facebook. Like personally message me, like let's become friends. Like I am here to support you in this journey and can take you from where you're at to where you want to be when it comes to your business and help you reach those goals that you never thought were even possible for you to reach.
Freedom in teaching. I think that's really what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And that's why I love that. Just kind of going through this and going back, I've taken notes. So if you are listening to the podcast, you may want to go back through this and take some notes. Definitely connect with Joanne. We've been talking for a couple of years now. Just seeing your growth is amazing. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Disrupt Education podcast. Definitely have all this stuff in the notes so you can connect. But I do want to say one thing as we're kind of early into 24 with educators, and Allie and I have had this conversation as well. This is your year. This is your year to really like stop being the victim, really, honestly,
Mhm.
and start being the perpetrator, the person who's really going to bring in education. It starts with us as educators, no matter where you are. So we're going to continue disrupting. Reach out to Joanne. For Allie and I'm Peter Hostrasser, Allie Privet. Thank you, Joanne, for being with us today. Go get it. Let's go, teachers. Keep disrupting education. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Share us out. We'll talk to you next time on the Disrupt Education podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Allie Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.